What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Two Game Podcast. We are continuing our deep dive into the Bioshock Trilogy. This is part 3 of that deep dive. This episode, we are diving in, and when I say diving in, I mean balls deep into Bioshock Infinite, where we are recapping the plot, talking about the vigors, the weapons, and enemy variety before we jump into our overall and final impressions of the final game in this trilogy. So super excited to cap off this trilogy, cap off this deep dive. I was kind of talking to Chris in the it wasn't a recorded pre-show segment, but before we jumped into the actual recording process, I don't how did you feel about this overall deep dive, sir? Like I think we definitely learned some things after playing these 3 games in comparison to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Final Fantasy X.
We tried something different, and I do love these games. Don't let what I'm about to say take away from that in any way. I love Bioshock. I loved them when I played them. I still like them, but it's not the easiest format to deep dive, especially when we tried to do an entire trilogy in 3 episodes. But on the one hand, it's like, okay, maybe we could have done 2 episodes per game and gone a little bit deeper into the story and the lore. But the problem is, in the game itself, you still can't go that deep into the story and the lore because it's not really given to you on a silver platter. I mean, you have to read the book, you have to go down the rabbit hole in the internet to get all of the lore, which is interesting, but it's like it's not really we're we're not deep diving Reddit. We're deep diving the game itself. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess if and again, I still love the trilogy and I love the games, but I don't know. Maybe just probably because we had the system down for RPGs and JRPGs, and there's just so much more story to go off of, and it's more of a build up in those types of games. Yeah, I don't know.
So
I think it's kind of a lesson learned situation, honestly.
yeah, absolutely. I think my opinion of the trilogy, like not the actual games themselves, but like the actual deep dive, the actual recording process, and us talking about it, not the specific games. This is definitely my least favorite out of the 3 that we've done. And it's mainly because, those other 2 games, like you said, that it has a deeper story. You can kind of, the great thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was, hey, I could ask questions. I mean, you knew the answers to them, but I could ask questions as we went, like, hey, this next part, who's gonna, like, is she gonna be doing this? This guy's fucked up. Like, he is bad, I'm telling you. And I did that for 4 episodes until it got revealed. And then Final Fantasy X, it was like I had already experienced the story, but I didn't experience the story, because you
Correct.
definitely filled in the gaps, shout out, and you know, made me fall in love with that game. Whereas the first time that I played it, I didn't necessarily fall in love with it. So this one is just, you don't have the characters, I think, is the big thing. You can
Right.
say what
There's
you
not
want about,
much to latch on to.
yeah, you can say what you want, that there's this huge lore and you can dive deep into that, and that's fine. I understand the criticisms, but in terms of the actual characters themselves, I think they just don't have any in-depth characters. This game, when we jump into Bioshock Infinite, is a little bit different. They did differently with the story this time around in comparison to the first 2 games. But for the most part, there's not characters that you can latch onto, and there's only, what, 2 characters that you really care about
Yep,
in this game.
pretty much.
So in the other games, it's, there's 5, 10 characters that you fall in love with, and you can talk about their personalities and the stupid shit that they do during the game. So I agree. I think this was definitely a learning experience. It wasn't necessarily. I think we're just going to continue with longer story driven games. Like if we did like Last of Us, I think that would be a good deep dive because it has characters. It has a deeper, richer plot. But in terms of like these little 10-hour spin-off games, probably not the best idea for a deep dive. But regardless, enjoy the experience overall. And it's a good learning lesson.
You got it.
But that's enough of that, guys. I just wanted to briefly talk about the overall trilogy and how we kind of felt, and then kind of moving forward. Our next deep dive, and Chris is already balls deep into it. Persona
The deep,
5 Royal,
the deepest of dives.
the deepest of dives, guys.
Yes,
We
I'm
are
not even
going.
wearing protection. I'm just off the diving board, head first, flapping around in there. Somebody's got to throw me a buoy.
We're gonna be so deep that y'all are gonna be like, "Oh my god, like you're deep," and we're gonna be like, "Shout out a lot." It's gonna be kind of one of those. Hopefully, the best deep dive that we've done up to this point. I have high hopes for this game, and I'm ready to jump into that. So y'all go ahead and start playing Persona 5 now, because it's a lengthy game. And Chris has it all broken down. We have a couple people that are going to play along with us. Should be a great deep dive. So when that will necessarily air, I'm not entirely sure, but just stay tuned, because I will let you know eventually.
Matt said his goal for this is for it to be our magnum opus. My goal is it for all of the listeners to immediately finish it and need a cigarette afterward. So that's that's,
Oh my
that's what we're
god,
going for.
I'm sweaty. I need a cigarette. I'm
I don't even
tired.
smoke, but I need one.
Right. All right, guys. Enough of the little housekeeping bullshit. It is time to cap off the deep dive. Bioshock Infinite, released March 25th, 2013 from 2K Games. So like I said earlier, we're going to jump into the plot. And then we're going to hit the vigors, and then the weapons, and then we'll talk briefly about the gear, and then the enemies, and then we'll kind of give our overall final impressions of the game. In July 1912, Booker DeWitt arrives in Colombia, where he is pursued by authorities who recognize him as a prophesized false shepherd who will corrupt Elizabeth and overthrow Colombia. Freeing Elizabeth from her tower, Booker narrowly evades Songbird. Commandeering on an airship, Booker promises to take Elizabeth to Paris, when she realizes they are going to New York City, Elizabeth knocks him out and flees. Booker awakens to find the airship under the control of Daisy Fitzroy, who offers to return the ship if Booker helps her arm the Vox Populi. I'm probably saying that wrong. Go fuck yourselves. Booker,
Papuli.
do what?
Papuli. That's what we'll go with.
Populi. Sounds like fucking Mario or some shit. So I'm gonna save my thoughts for in a little bit. We'll kind of recap the story real quick, and then we can kind of go over the story beats and whatnot. Booker and Elizabeth join forces to secure weapons from a local gunsmith. Traveling through tears, they arrive. Excuse me. Traveling through tears. Okay, I'm Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi, guys. You gotta forgive me. Okay, give me a fucking second. They arrive in a world where Booker is a Vox Populi martyr, and open warfare has erupted into Colombia. Elizabeth kills Fitzroy to prevent her from executing a founder boy. Songbird attacks the duo as they try to flee Colombia, and their airship crashes back to the city. Elizabeth and Booker discover a conspiracy behind the city's founding. Elizabeth is Comstock's adopted daughter, whom he plans to groom into Colombia's leader after his death. Comstock killed his wife and the
Lutesses.
Lutesses. Thank you. I was
I
like,
got your back.
have I ever seen that word before?
Yes.
And
Yes.
installed a siphon in Elizabeth's tower to limit her power. Elizabeth is recaptured by Songbird. Pursuing her, Booker is brought forward in time to New Year's Eve of 1983 by an elderly Elizabeth as Columbia attacks New York City. God damn, dude, I can't fucking read today.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
Sometimes it'd be like that, man. This Elizabeth returns Booker to 1912 with information on controlling Songbird in hopes he can save her younger self and erase the torture and brainwashing she suffered. Booker rescues Elizabeth, and the pair pursue Comstock to his airship. Comstock demands that Booker explain Elizabeth's past to her, and the two begin to argue. An enraged Booker drowns Comstock in a baptismal font. Booker denies knowledge of Elizabeth's past, but she asserts that he has simply forgotten. Booker and Elizabeth direct Songbird to destroy the siphon, unlocking Elizabeth's full powers. All right, so take a break for just a second. Story-wise, okay, this is completely different than Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2. Completely
Absolutely.
different. There's actually a story here.
Mm-hmm. A pretty
And
good one.
yeah, for the most part.
I said pretty good. I didn't say great.
All right. So I'm gonna do it's like some I don't want to call it Inception because it's not Inception, but we're gonna have an ADD moment within an ADD moment. Okay.
Mm.
I'm just gonna go ahead and warn. I've teased it over I think the last 2 episodes. Okay. Not a huge fan of this game. Okay. Not a huge fan of it. And I'm gonna be in the minority on all of my opinions, probably, because a lot of people think this is the best game in the trilogy. And I can see why. I can see why. I just have certain issues with it that prevents it from doing that. With that being said, I am going to try my best to not put a negative spin on this game because I don't want to talk shit about a game for fucking an hour and a half. Okay. So I'm going to try to put a positive spin on it, my best. Okay. But I'm still going to call shit when it's shit. Okay. So now we're going back to the other ADD moment within the story, which is to talk about the overall story. And I do think, like you said, the story is good. Overall, it is good. I believe that they. One thing I will say about 2K games and the developers behind this game is every game they seem to see the issues with the prior game and they fix that. Sometimes they fix it too much and overcorrect, kind of like what we said in Bioshock 2. But I think they made a conscious decision to say, hey, let's actually fucking do a story this time that actually makes sense. It's a more traditional narrative told over 10 to 15 hours. So I do like that they went this route in comparison to the other games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitively an upgrade in how the story is presented. I think personally, I think the story itself is better in this one, but well, we'll talk more about that when we review why our in-game thoughts. But the pacing seems better because it's just more straightforward. You don't have to find 1,000 audio recordings to figure out what the hell's happening and why it's happening. It's just kind of given to you, so you can focus on the gameplay. And yeah, no, I agree. I think the layout and the format of the way the game is presented is a significant upgrade.
So here's the issue that I have with the story, and we'll kind of dive into it a little bit more in a little bit. This is a story that kind of dragged on for me over the course of the 10 to 15 hours. I think they needed to trim some of the fat on this, just a little bit. I don't necessarily agree that the pacing was good. It was look, the story is definitely better. It's better told than the previous games. I like this story more so than the previous games. I actually care about this story more so than the previous games. So I will say that everything about the narrative within this game is significantly better. And then, like you said, you don't have to find tape recordings and shit like that. I mean, they have the little collectibles, but I mean, I really just collected it and just fucking moved on with my life. I really
Right.
didn't give a shit. But yeah, as we kind of get past the story, we can kind of, I guess, talk about some of the minor issues that I have with the game and the overall story. All right. Elizabeth, let me figure out where I'm at. Elizabeth opens a tear and transports them to the underwater city of Rapture. Okay, we should have stopped right here, rather than a few minutes ago. This moment right here, she opens a tear and transports them to the underwater city of Rapture. I'm playing the entire game, and I'm like, you know, I I get that they wanted to do something different, and I don't know if they could revisit Rapture for a third fucking time and it'd be interesting and a good game. So I feel like they had to do something differently with the story in terms of going to a different setting and whatnot. Essentially, they just created a different Rapture just somewhere else in the sky instead of in the sea.
which is stupid.
A city in the sky, or doing something differently than Rapture, or both.
No, dude, they had an easy cop out. All right, they wanted different visuals. They wanted a brighter game, which I think is idiotic because the Rapture's the best part about Bioshock to me. Uh, where we left off in Bioshock 2, Rapture was essentially evicted and empty. So you could have just had old dude formulate his new religion there. Like part of it got destroyed, but not all of it got destroyed. I would have been completely fine going back to Rapture. I don't think it's repeating itself because you can still change the gameplay aspects and you can give us parts of Rapture that we didn't go to before, you know? But that's probably a biased opinion because Rapture makes BioShock for me. I mean, that's my biggest complaint with the game in and of itself is you're not in Rapture. But why would you go to Rapture when you can have a floaty city in the clouds? It's horseshit.
So I will agree with you. Actually, I will agree. Rapture is 100% the better of the two worlds, and it's not even close. I prefer Rapture, not just because of the design of the levels and whatnot, because I think personally, I think the level designs of the first two games are just significantly better than this one,
Hmm.
and it just aesthetically it looks so much better. I hate the brightness of it. Now, again, full disclaimer: I played this on the Switch and not on a console, so
It's just as bright on a console.
is it just as bright on the okay?
Yeah.
So I prefer the dark abyss of Rapture in comparison to this heavenly bright ass uh city in the sky. It's just I'm not a huge fan of the actual world that they built here. Now, I had like a love hate relationship with some of the levels, and then I I think it's interesting that they did a kind of a almost like carnival-y look to Columbia with it being in the
Hmm.
sky. And it definitely has old school feel to it. But yeah, bro, it doesn't compare to Rapture whatsoever. When they went back to Rapture, I wish they would have done it sooner. I wish this wasn't an in-game thing, and I wish it wasn't a oh, you go through this little part right here and you're fucking back. Like they did that as more of a like an Easter egg more
Mm.
than anything. And I wish it was a bigger part of the game. I wish you went back to Rapture and you spent like another like I don't know like half of the game there. That would have been cool.
Yeah, no, they did that to show Elizabeth's power to link the universes, right? That's all they did that for. They
Feels like
showed
a
us
cop out.
Rapture. Yeah, it was a cop out. They showed us Rapture so that we could be like, "Oh, they are connected." They're not fucking connected. All right. They did not do enough with that. And it's like it's like when they were making all those damn DC shows and Superman would make an appearance in Arrow or vice versa. Like this isn't fucking Clark Kent. He just showed up in an episode of Arrow. All right? Like I mean, it's not the Justice League. He just made a cameo. And that's what we did with Rapture. It was garbage. And again, I'm not going to spend an hour shitting on the game because I do like the game, but that's my one major fucking complaint was the aesthetic environment and how and I get it. Father Comstock, they wanted it to look like heaven and make you feel like you were heaven while you were there. Who gives a shit? Change the story up for that and put me back in the world that got you here. You know?
You know, maybe do something along the lines of like I don't know, he's like this heavenly guy, this godlike figure, and you're in this deep abyss of rapture, and hey, y'all are all sinners, you're all fucked up people, and if you want to, you got to follow me to ascend to somewhere other than rapture. And then they bring in like another small portion of the game where it is Columbia or something like that, where he's
Hmm.
actually leading them from hell, so to speak. I think that would have
Sure,
been more interesting,
that would have been
personally.
cool. Yeah, that would have been cool. I'd have been on board
And,
with that.
and you could have had, your cake and eat it too, on top of that.
And you could have had actual closure with Rapture. Like in that transition, somebody could have just blown whatever was left of it to smithereens, and that would have been like the 3/4 game setup for the in-game plot that would have taken place in Columbia.
I actually absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree. And it would have been a good, like you said, a good closure, good trilogy capper to say, okay, Rapture is fucking done. And then maybe in 15, 20 years, we can do a remake of the game and all that other shit.
I think it bothers me because they marketed it as a trilogy, and that's how we played it, is as a trilogy. But it's not a trilogy. It's a game, a sequel, and a spinoff. So, as much as I enjoyed all three of them as separate entities, it's not a trilogy. The book series did a little bit better of a job by tying them together, but even in reviewing some of that to get ready for this a few weeks ago, it's still not one continuous story. I mean,
Yeah, I wish there was a little bit more connective tissue with the story in comparison to the other two games. Like, again, we're shitting all over this. I still think the story's better than the first two games. It's
no,
just
no, I
we're
agree.
mostly it's the world. It's the world itself. Because my biggest complaint of the entire game is, and I'll just go ahead and say this out loud, guys. For the first, I don't know, 8, 9 hours, maybe 10 hours, something along those lines, I was in love with this game, in love with it. I would have stood on a hill and said, "This is the best Bioshock game," and it's not even fucking close. Not even close. I would have said, "I love this world. I think the world is maybe not as interesting, but I feel like the overall world is better." I would have had those opinions, but something happened. Something happened around like hour 9, hour 10, somewhere around there, and I said to myself, this is not as interesting as the first two games. Even with the better story, I feel like I'm just kind of plotting through the story, and I really just don't even give a shit anymore.
You've already answered that, whether you realize it or not. It was a 2K overcorrection. So the
Exactly.
biggest complaint after the first game in transitioning to the second game was, well, it wasn't as long. Like I felt like I got DLC and not a brand new game because it was, sure, you got to play as a Big Daddy and that was cool. Don't get me started on how OP the drill is. We've talked about that, but it was 2 to 3 hours shorter. It was in
Hammer.
Rapture, so yeah, not much changed. So they heard that when the consumers said, "Hey, make this shit longer." So this one, they completely abandoned Rapture. They abandoned any horror element that they had going for them in the first two, and they just made a 17 to 18 hour shooter.
And
And
that's
every
where
single time you got so close to Comstock, it happens once, cool. It happens twice, whatever. You got to drag it out. Like 5 fucking times, you could have been in there and ended this shit, but he just slipped away. I mean, they were just dragging it out at that point.
that's my biggest issue
That,
with the game. It's too long, which I understand is never a problem that people want to have, but it is.
yeah, well, the story as a standalone story was so good that it should have been ribboned and bowed after about 13 hours. I didn't need to chase his ass for the last 3 hours that I chased his ass.
I don't think like I said, the first 8, 9 hours, I think the world is interesting. It's just it becomes kind of samey a little
Hmm.
bit, and I don't know if it's I don't know if it's the brightness. I don't know if it's just all the buildings look the fucking same. At least in Rapture, each area kind of had a different vibe. But
Had its own aesthetic.
exactly, if you ask me right now to describe what a level in Colombia looked like, I would swear that 6 of those levels looked exactly the same way that I describe it. And you probably wouldn't be able to tell me, oh, this is this part of the game. There's like 2, maybe 3 levels or 3 areas that I saw that I'm like, okay, this is vastly different than the other level, and it definitely has that carnival-y look to it, where there's like, it's not big tents or anything like that, but it's huge ass buildings, and you go in there and it's like just random shit in them, buildings, government buildings and stuff like that. But after so long, it just becomes samey, and it just feels like, okay, I'm just going to the next thing. I'm just going to the next area. That's really
You're
it. And
you're not even going to the next area, man. You're just going to the next wave of enemies. Like it eventually they ran out of creativity about 10 hours into the story, and it just became a full-on shooter, you know?
which we will talk about the enemies in a little bit, because that's another huge those are the 2 big issues that I have with the game. It's too long, and then the enemy variety is the other portion. And I think the enemy variety it has a play into why this game falls off a cliff about 8 to 10 hours for me personally. So we'll dive into that in just a little bit once we finish a couple other things. So, the newly aware Elizabeth explains there are countless alternate lighthouses and versions of Booker and Elizabeth. I still think this is cool, even though I think they just fucking shoehorned it in and fucking didn't really give a shit. But still interesting, because you don't expect it in this game, because this is towards the end of the game. So I was like, ooh, that's nice. But yeah. Their reality is one of an infinite number depending on their choices. This is the fucking multiverse in the MCU, guys. Okay. She
Yep.
shows that Robert, looking at you, sir,
Lutesi.
Lutesi,
Yes.
approached Booker on behalf of Comstock to acquire Booker's infant daughter, Anna DeWitt, in exchange for erasing his debts, as Comstock was rendered aged and sterile as a result of exposure to tears. Booker attempted to take Anna back from Comstock, but the closing tear severed Anna's finger. Comstock raised Anna as his own daughter, Elizabeth. Her severed finger, which caused her to exist in 2 realities simultaneously, is the source of her ability to create tears. Robert Lutesi, angry at Comstock's actions, convinced Rosalind to help him bring Booker to the reality where Columbia exists to rescue Elizabeth. Elizabeth explains that Comstock will always remain alive in alternate universes, since the Luteces have enlisted the Bookers of numerous different universes to try to end the cycle. Since stopping Comstock requires intervening in his birth, Elizabeth takes Booker back in time to a baptism he attended in the hope of atoning for the sins he committed at Wounded Knee. She explains that while Booker changed his mind, some Bookers in alternate universes accepted the baptism and were reborn as Zachary Comstock. Booker, joined by other universes, Elizabeth's at the baptism, allows them to drown him at the moment of his choice, preventing Comstock's existence. One by one, the Elizabeths begin to disappear, the screen cutting to black on the last. And then we have a post-credit scene where Booker awakens in his apartment on October 8th, 1893. He calls out for Anna and opens the door to her room before the screen cuts to black. So what do we think about the ending in comparison to, I don't know, let's go with the first game, okay? Regardless of the story issues that I have with the first 2 games, it was a nice twist at the end of the first game. So what do you think? What do you think about this one?
Oh, I love this one. So if the game's 17 hours, I think from hour 1 to about hour 11 are awesome. 12 to 14 are, God, will this ever end? And then 15, 16, and 17 are amazing. Like, I love the ending of this game. I thought it was cool how they did give you story the entire time, but it wasn't just one twist at the end. It was like an entire series of events that you were just like, oh shit, that literally makes all this other stuff make sense. I
A
loved it.
twist
I
within a
really
twist.
did. Yes, several. And just the fact that um I mean, I don't know, just the cycle and the way that a never-ending cycle of cycles is happening all around you, and you're the one plot line that figures out a way to break it. I thought it was well done. But the fact that the dude was such a horrible human in an earlier life that he got so down on his luck and on his debts that he sold his daughter to himself and then didn't realize it is I was just like, damn, that was good. Like that was really good.
I don't think you could have said that any better, honestly. And I don't know if I have anything to add to that. What you said earlier about hour 1 through 9 or 10 is fucking great. It's fantastic. And then 12 through 15 is a fucking drag. But when we get towards the end of the game, once you are able to go back to Rapture, to me, the game brought me back in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like as
For
soon as I
sure.
think I'm out, they bring me back in. And that moment kind of brought me back in, like I said. And then the twist within a twist, it's fucking Inception and shit like that. And I thought it was super interesting. And it was just like, oh, fuck. Okay. Oh, fuck. And it was just like saying that every fucking 10 minutes. So yeah, I agree. I think the ending was pretty good. And it kind of capped off while a lengthy story that overstayed its welcome. I think it was a good ending to this game.
And the fact that you were raptured into Rapture, I was like, man, I don't know who wrote this game, but they were brought up in some indoctrinated crap. Like I was like, I see what you did there. Very well done, screenwriters. Very well done.
All right, now we're gonna jump into the vigors. So these are the abilities in the game. You're limited to 2 at a time, but they can be swapped out whenever you want in the menu, which is a change from the first 2 games. So I remember complaining in the first 2 games. It's like I hate the aspect of going to this machine, changing out the shit that I want, and then fucking going back and oh fuck, let me go back and change them again. So the aspect of okay, I can change this shit out whenever I want is great. With that being said, why don't you just give them to me all at once? You know?
Well, be fair now. Our biggest complaint about the weapon wheel and the ability wheel was how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had to hold down and cycle through. So pick your poison, young sir.
This guy. Let me bitch, okay? Let me be a hypocrite. No,
Hypocrisize.
that's fair. That's fair. I guess I didn't think about that, so I will recant what I just said. Okay, just y'all just rewind. Never heard any of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, look
Take
look
that devil's kiss and return it to cinder.
look right at this pen. Look at the light, like Men in Black. It requires salts to be used, and each ability can be upgraded twice. So, before we jump into each individual vigor, what did you think about the vigors in this game in comparison to the abilities in the first 2 games?
I mean, some of them were generically the same. There wasn't as many in this game because there wasn't as many like little trap ones and shit like you could use in 1 and 2. But I was honestly fine with that because it became more of a shooter and less of a horror thriller. So I mean, you're just kind of deploying and destroying most of the time you're playing anyway. That didn't really bother me so much. I do like the upgrades, how they all had a variation of a trap. That was super fun to me, and I like the fact that in the first 2 games, it seems like there were certain abilities that you had to use against certain enemies. It was almost like you it's not that you couldn't kill the enemy without using that, but it made it like a just much easier fight. This one they're all kind of generic. Like you can just kind of play around and do whatever the hell you want and nothing specifically doesn't work against somebody and there's only very few that do very specific damage to certain enemies. So I liked it. It was cool to me how it was just more of a balance and instead of having to cycle through 40 of them to equip the 5 you wanted, Like as far as the smaller one goes, not the abilities themselves, but like the passive ones. You know what I'm talking about? How they
Hmm.
figured out a way to kind of roll those together into the active ones, like with the traps and whatnot. I think the vigors were a much easier play than the plasmids.
They I have like a love hate relationship with the vigors in this game in comparison to the plasmids. Okay, the plasmids I felt like were easier to understand. They were easier. They went about easier. Like to me, the game did a better job of telling you how the plasmids work in the first two games. Now, a huge complaint that I have, and this is a huge complaint, and this has nothing to do with the actual game itself. This is just the Switch version uh only. Okay. Maybe it's me becoming fucking old and I can't fucking see in my old age. Okay. But for the love of God, why do we have to shrink down the letters of every fucking word down to this minuscule fucking text where I'm having to put the screen next to my face? I'm like, what the fuck does that even say? What the fuck is he even doing? I don't know if that was a creative choice to get it on the Switch itself, was you had to shrink down the text. But for the love of God, man, like I'm not gonna lie, the vigors and how they explained what they were and what they did, the writings on the maps or on the menus and whatnot. I did my best not to ever fucking read any of that shit because it was so fucking tiny. And like I said, I don't know if that was a decision to be able to play it on the Switch. They had to downgrade some shit, obviously. Um, Granted, this game came out fucking almost 10 years ago. Uh, so I don't know why they did that, but I don't know. Did you feel the same thing? Did you even notice that?
I did not. I did not. But then again, I'm not a get off my lawn guy at 33 like you are apparently.
That's fair.
Like when kids come trick or treat, you give them fucking Tootsie Rolls, don't you? You don't give them Snickers.
Right. Nah, I give them the candy corn. It just fucking
Yeah,
pisses them
one
off.
piece, one piece. Just I'm just messing, man. But no, honestly, I didn't even notice that. To be honest with you. Then again, I mean, I'm normally wearing these, so
Hmm.
it's fine. If I tried it without them, I'd probably be blind as you are.
But so with all that being said, that I didn't fucking feel like reading the shit because it was so fucking tiny. I and this is a compliment and also a complaint at the same time. So I'm not a fan of the vigors in this game. I prefer the plasmids. Even though I mean they're essentially the same thing, kind of. It's just they go about, I
They
guess,
stack them
wording it.
differently.
Yeah. I just prefer how they did it in the previous game in comparison to this one. With that being said, I didn't find myself using the vigors often. I didn't go past and when we dive into the like shock jockey, which is just the electrobolt, and the devil's kiss, which is essentially the incinerate. Other than those two, I didn't really use any of the other vigors, and that was mainly one because of the writing. I didn't feel like fucking reading what each individual of these vigors did because again, the fucking letters. I'll stop bitching about that in just a second. I swear to God. Um,
You're fine.
and the second thing is the shooter aspect of the game is so good. It feels good in my hands when I'm shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out.
Shout out.
That
Sure.
I did not want to really ever use the vigors. So I just used the basic ones that I just knew, which was the electrobolt and the incinerate. And I
Okay.
just I just prayed and sprayed with the bullets.
Did you ever experiment with any of them at all, or did you literally just use those two for pretty much all of it?
So here's how the deep dive series kind of worked, guys. We recorded the first two episodes a couple months ago, and then for once in my life, I beat the game before Chris did, which is almost never happens. Uh,
You pretty sure you beat it before I started it, for being honest.
that's true. That's true. Um, I blasted through this game. Now again, the first 8-9 hours, I couldn't put this motherfucker down. So I did not really experiment with the vigors throughout the gameplay. The first time that I played it, okay, I did
Okay.
not do that. I kind of just wanted to. I had a lot of other things going on, and then once it got to hour, like I said, 10 to 15 or whatever, my interest kind of dropped off, and I was just trying to rush through the game. Full disclaimer, I was trying to do that. So I didn't really experiment too much. Now, when you went back and you told me, hey, I beat the game, I'm ready to do the deep dive, I was like, okay, so let me go back and kind of play with the game a little bit more so I can get a fresh sense of what happened. Because I'll fucking forget about shit. If I don't 100% like something, I will 100% forget most of it. So I went back and then I experimented with some of these vigors. Not all of them, but for the most part, I experimented with all of them.
Okay. Yeah, just curious. I wasn't sure if because I know you told me at some point you just fell off, so I was like, he's probably just using incinerate and electro bolt and just mowing everybody down. But as long as you at least saw what the other ones did, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it was
Because I like,
literally the end game. I found a save point, and I just went back and I just used them all for I don't know 15-20 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'm good.
yeah,
Like I'm good with not being in this world anymore. It's fine.
that's fair. Yeah, we won't delve too deep into all of them. Then I was mostly just curious as to which ones you picked apart and which ones you like the most.
Well, I have what each individual vigor is, so I'll go ahead and just mention those, and then you can tell me
Sure.
which ones you used.
Yeah.
Uh, Bucking Bronco, which by the way, ADD moment, kinda still related. I wish they would. I mean, when you think about it, the names kind of fit, but I wish they would have just been a little more simplistic with the vigors. It seemed like they were trying to be, and this is a fucking nitpick. I absolutely fucking understand. Okay, this is a 100% a nitpick. I just wish they would have just called it Electrobolt or Incinerate. You know, that kind of shit. Possession. Oh my god, like that's exactly what the fucking vigor is. Like that makes sense. That kind of thing. Like bucking bronco. What the fuck was that? It allows you to cause the ground to crack like an earthquake, throwing and suspending enemies in air, causes them to be defenseless and take extra damage.
It is funny to watch, but not super effective.
Agreed. Agreed. This is also one of the ones that I used when I went back and played it again, and I was like, well, this isn't really doing anything. Okay, whatever. Murder of crows.
This one's
It
dope.
gives it gives you control over well, they murder of crows. It sends a swarm to attack the enemies. Now, in the first two games, it was bees, right? The plasmid.
Yes. Hmm.
So now they changed it for crows. I didn't mind this. I didn't mind this whatsoever. It was one that I didn't use throughout the entire gameplay, but occasionally. Um, but yeah, it's one of those uh damage per second over time kind of thing. Then we have
It was
shotgun.
just it was really cool to watch though. That was my thing with Murder of Crows. Like it wasn't just overly traumatic damage wise. It would kill just like simp enemies or whatever. It would straight up murk those. But against bosses, it bought you a lot of stall time. It was pretty much a stun against higher powered enemies.
Yep.
And honestly, in my opinion, just look cool as shit because you just wow, and then it's like your whole screen fills black, and there's literally a murder of crows that just murk. But
they just
that's one
they
of the
murder
ones that's actually it's specific to bosses for it to actually be effective. That's one of the few ones that is specific.
bosses. You know, people keep throwing out the word bosses in these games, and I
Oh,
don't
don't you
really.
do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
I don't really feel like there are bosses in these games.
Higher powered enemies. That's what we'll go with. Handyman.
like like every time I say something and they're like the bosses are really good, bruh. What fucking bosses are you talking about?
That's fair. This one didn't even have a final boss.
There was one boss in Bioshock, and that was the end dude.
Oh, you don't even know the war you just started.
Hey, I said it on the last episode. I said we're either going to lose fans with this episode or I'm going to gain them for the entertainment factor. I'm just saying this is a hill that I am willing to die on. There are
I
no
will not
fucking
let you die
bosses.
alone. I will shield up with you, sir. That's
You
fine.
agree with me? You agree with me?
No, not completely.
Oh.
But for the experience that you had, I will not let you die alone on this hill.
So I mentioned this to you previously. I said, when we played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Final Fantasy X, you fucking know when you're fighting a boss or a mini boss. Okay? You fucking know it. In this game, you could go the entire game and go, that was a boss? What the it just seemed like a normal enemy to me. And like you said,
But
slightly stronger powered enemies.
yeah, no, that's fair.
No, you can't convince me that there are bosses in these games. They're not. They're not. None whatsoever.
I won't try. I won't try. I'm just gonna let you run with that one. Shock jockey.
Moving on.
Yes.
Essentially the Electro Bolt. Then Devil's Kiss, which is Incinerate. Then we have Possession, which grants you the ability to control machinery and turn foes into allies. And it is also known as the hacking tool in this game. So, how do you feel about essentially that they took away the hacking from the first two games, and it's almost not it's a very, very small portion of the game in comparison to the first two games, especially in
As it should
comparison to
be.
the first game, as it should be. Like you could do it, but you don't have to do it. They kind of changed it out for like locksmiths, key locks, with Elizabeth opening up doors and shit like that. They kind of changed that a little bit. But for the most part, other than when you got like the turrets and whatnot, I didn't really ever hack anything. Those are really the only things I ever hacked.
Yeah, no, completely. 100% agree. That's fuck the hacking. Didn't miss that at all. It's what
Right.
like even though this one was longer, it made it seem like you were playing through it faster, minus the story beats repeating themselves because I didn't have to stop at every vending machine and hack that bitch. Like I'm perfectly fine without that. If fans of the series want to call that an overcorrection, by all means, you're free to your own opinion. It was not. It was needed.
It was a good decision. I
Yes.
appreciated it. Now, I have like PTSD from that one fucking area in Bioshock. The four cornered area where you turn one corner and there's an alarm and then turret, and then you do shit with that, and the next corner is a turret and a camera, and then it sends all these fucking enemies. Man, fuck that level, man. Fuck that level.
100%.
Then we
100%.
have charge. It hurls you into a targeted enemy, dealing heavy physical damage with impact. I didn't really use this much at all.
This one's good.
Was
This
it?
one's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Ret-
nothing else to say about it. That's all it does. But it's very effective, especially since you're in the sky. You can just straight up launch people into hell.
this is true. This is very true. Return to Sender grants the power to stop gunfire by deploying a shield in front of you. I used this a handful of times. It wasn't something that I just it, if you have watched any of our Let's Play series, if you have followed this podcast for any length of time, I am not a defense kind of guy. I'm let's get balls deep in that shit and fuck it kind of thing. And so I didn't use Return to Sender a whole bunch. Although
Yeah.
there were barricades that you could use with Elizabeth with her powers, right? Am I remembering correctly?
Wait, what'd you say? You cut out for a second.
When Elizabeth has her powers, she could have barricades. Is that right? I want to say she did.
She could. Well, if they were there in other tears, she could open the tear and they would like
Yeah.
appear. But yeah,
Which we have not talked about that. How do you feel about her essentially going with you through these levels, and then she's like, hey, use this power and you can get health over here, or there's ammo over here, or there's a turret over here. How do you feel about you just being able to use that in these levels?
It's a cool addition. I mean, it makes her not just somebody that you have to protect and not let die, and also somebody that isn't just there with no purpose for the entire game outside of being a pivotal role in the story. I mean, it gives her a purpose as a character for you specifically in combat. I think in certain areas it was probably overdone. Like it kind of seemed busted in open field when, well, I'm out of all of my ammo, but here's an endless supply of rockets. So cool. Thanks for that. You know, but especially in areas where you would go through and then have to fight your way back through, it was cool to have to you if you didn't know the story and you didn't know where you were going, then you wouldn't plan it. You would just burn all that stuff, and then you would have to survive on the way back through without any of it, which I thought was kind of a cool concept. But it's like they use situations like that to build it up, but then they completely break it by just giving you way too much to begin with. So, like I think it was cool in concept, but I think they just kind of overdid it a little bit.
That is kind of where some of the issues with the pacing and the level design towards the back end of the game falls for me, because it feels like you go from one uh you go from one zone where you're fighting hordes of enemies and she's doing that to the next horde of enemies to the next horde of enemies, and it's just like I'm
Hmm.
doing the same shit over and over and over again. um I think it was fine. I think it was fine. It gives you some added strategies with the levels in particular. Um, I do know one thing, Elizabeth. She, it was like every fucking 5 seconds, she was like, "You need some health. Hey, do you need this coin, bro? If you hand me one more fucking coin, fucking back off, bitch. Just keep that coin in your pocket. You know that would have been something I think would have been better. Is if why do I have to accept it from her? Why can't she just fucking give it to me? You know?
Yeah, why doesn't she just say here you go, and then you see a little icon on the top right, bloop, +5 in your purse, or your wallet, whatever. Why does there have to be an actual video sequence of her just fucking Ben Roethlisberger this coin from like 200 yards away? And then he's always so grateful, like you didn't just pillage 6 dead bodies to find 50 cents. Like, thank you so much. Got it.
Oh fuck, man.
Just again, overdone,
Overdone.
little overdone.
The last one is Undertow, which attracts and repels adversaries, reflects all incoming projectiles, and pushes back all enemies in front of you, knocking them down and throwing them away, basically. I used it, but I didn't use it a whole bunch.
It was good for rockets. That was it.
Yeah, yeah. So that
Oh,
is
the
it.
on the no pun intended, the flip sign of the whole coin thing that I just went off about, it was
Mm-hmm.
dope as shit when she gave you ammo. I will say that when you're just like spraying and praying and you realize you have like 2 shotgun shells and she's like, "Here, take this." Bam, and then you're completely full again. Loved that. That was pretty cool.
So you don't mind the cinematic nature of that?
No, it almost seems like the ammo one seems quicker. Like I guess it is honestly a faster cinematic because you're in the heat of battle, so they can't drag it out like the coin thing. But I don't know. I just feel like the ammunition side of it makes her a very useful ally. Offering me a sitcom episode every time she wants to give me $5 is where I think it gets overdone.
I don't mind her flipping the ammo to you because it feels like you're in a war zone and she's just like,
Mm,
here. It feels like a fucking
right.
movie to me. So I don't know. After about 15 hours of her doing that, it got kind of old, but it is what it is. It's not necessarily a complaint by any means that I have.
It was funny at first, and then it became a complaint by the end of the game for me anyway. Like that's at some point I was just like, keep your fucking money. I don't need it. I don't have to buy shit anyway. Like just
Oh no. I agree with you on that. Like, bro, just give me the fucking money. Why do we have to have a cinematic? Why do we have to have any of this? Just hey, I found money in the background. Oh, thanks. And then you just pocket it. That would have been better. So jumping into the weapons, we're not going to spend a ton of time with the weapons, okay? Um, uh, I appreciate the variety of the weapons this time around, okay? I think they took a step back by only letting you carry two weapons at a time. So you know how Chris mentioned it earlier. They have a complaint and then they overcorrect. There's a complaint of the weapon wheel in the first game, and they overcorrect. Dumb decision to get rid of the weapon wheel for me personally. Now, did they need to have, you know, if you're watching us, the wheel of weapons and then a second level of weapons? No, they didn't need that many weapons at once, but I need fucking more than two weapons. Like that
I
was
should be
fucking
able to
stupid.
I should be able to fill up my D-pad with weapons. Like I should be able to just give me four. I'll take four at a time. Left, right, up, down. That way I can just immediately cycle through one and go straight to.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying give me all the guns at once or give me seven guns, but give me, like you said, give me four. And then not only do you have only two weapons at a time, but then if you needed a weapon for a specific purpose, or let's say you needed or you were going to a level and all they had were fucking like heaters and RPGs, and you're like, fuck it, dude, give me a fucking different weapon. And
Yep.
this would be nice if I was able to stock weapons. But no, once you have a weapon, you can only swap it out with another weapon. You can't just hold it and all that. I hated that decision that they made for this game. Or another thing they could have done is give it some RPG elements where you get more weapons as you progress through the story. You start off the game with only carrying two, and then I don't know, 10 hours in, oh, you can carry a third weapon, or maybe get a third vigor, or something along those lines. I think they could
Sure.
have added some progression factors to this to make it a little bit more interesting.
Yep. No, I agree with that. I'd be completely on board. If a 5 hour intervals you go from 3 to 4, and even if it maxes out at 4 or 5, that's plenty. I agree. That would have been much better.
We have the burst gun, the carbine, which I use the carbine almost exclusively. That was like my gun.
That was your go-to.
That was my go-to.
Yeah, fair. That's
Uh,
pretty good.
the crank gun, the Hellfire, hand cannon. I use the hand cannon quite a bit. Um, the heater, pistol, repeater, RPG, shotgun. I used quite frequently. Sniper rifle, I almost never used it. Uh,
Really?
yeah,
Oh man, I've played shoddy snipers for the entire story. If I didn't have to get something else.
I could use the carbine for the most part to snipe enemies. Like it wasn't the best thing to use, but I could use it somewhat effectively.
Yeah, no, you can. I'm just I don't know. I've always been a sniper rifle person, even in like Call of Duty and Halo and stuff like that.
Yeah, just different play styles. Like I said, I like to get in there balls deep and just shoot shit. I like to be fast paced.
Yeah, keep on moving around. I get it.
They had the volley gun and then the machine gun. Use the machine gun quite a bit actually. So if you have played Infinite and you know all the weapons because you love this fucking game, okay? You are in love with this game. You think it's a 10 out of 10. It's your favorite game of all time. And there's no game around here that comes close to Bioshock Infinite. And you fucking know all of this by heart. You've played it 20,000 times, okay? And you're thinking to yourself, hey, you're fucking missing one weapon. You're right. I'm missing one weapon. I saved it for last for a very specific reason, okay? That is because I fucking hated it. And that was the skyhook. For the love of God. For the love of God. I fucking hated traversal in this game. And the skyhook in particular. I can't stress enough how much I fucking hated it. Vehemently fucking hated it.
you hated using the sky rails. You didn't hate the sky hook as a weapon.
I didn't use the skyhook as a weapon very often. Like I said, I was using this game as a fucking shooter, but the skyhook as a weapon, okay, I will give you that. The skyhook as a weapon is fine. I used it, but the traversal aspects of the skyhook and the skyrail system, they can go right and fuck themselves because fuck that. I fucking hated it.
Yeah. Just let me know when that tangent's done. I don't want to interrupt it. I'm gonna let you get it
Oh
all
no,
out.
no, no! I'm still fucking going, dog. I'm still fucking going.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And go. Continue.
we mentioned in the Discord months back that the location system, you know, the arrow that points you in the next direction and shit like that, that this game was by far the best in the trilogy. And okay, I can go with that. That's fine. I think I still prefer the compass arrow of the first two games, but I think this one is really good, where it just shows you the path to go to. The issue with that is when you use the fucking Skyrail system, it's fucking confusing because it sends you on one rail and then you're going and you're like, and then it just fucking disappears. And you're like, where the fuck am I going? So I spent several times trying to figure out where the fuck I was trying to go with this traversal system and the skyhook skyrail system because of the arrow trying to point you in where to go next. It was fucking confusing, and it needs to go fuck itself. 100% go fuck itself. I'm done with my rant.
Okay. Yeah. No. Um. Yeah, it's bad. I wasn't gonna stop your rant to argue with that fact by any stretch of the imagination. Did you played it on the Switch? You said, huh?
Yeah.
All right. It's not as bad on console. It's because on the Switch, the Joy Cons are so finicky, trying to angle the screen to where the center of where you need to latch onto is in the center, and you can actually hit the button. It's very aggravating. It's almost like solving a goddamn puzzle every time you have to do it, even though you know exactly where you need to go. Um, it's a lot smoother. The camera's a lot smoother on console. I will give it that. It's not nearly as much of a headache. It's still not necessary. I mean, I get it. We're on floating cities, so we got to figure out one way to get from here to there, which is fine. The skyhook should be something. The sky rail could be used for just a direct transport level to level, like the train was in the second game. But it's not something that I should be forced to utilize in combat, especially when I have to play it on the GD Switch when it's so terrible and janky. Um, but
I
yeah, no,
remember
no, I won't contest anything you said. It's just pretty unnecessary.
I remember one level. It loops around. I forget where it's at, but there's a portion over here which is you have to get to, and it's like the bottom left. And when you're trying to go to the next area, the way the map shows you where to go, it's like it doesn't tell you to get off of it and go down. So I was like, where the fuck am I supposed to go? Like I couldn't fucking get around. And then I was like, oh wait, there's this fucking area way down there. Like, is that where I'm trying to go? And then it leads me to the next zone. I'm like, bruh, really, really. But yeah,
Yeah, that was
uh,
just a fuck you moment that the game makers are like, here you go, man, have fun with this. I feel like, but as an overall, I agree with you. It probably wouldn't have aggravated me so bad if you didn't have to utilize it for the final battle sequence. Like if you don't use the sky rail for the final battle sequence, it's 5 times harder and almost unbeatable on normal or hard difficulty because the people just come at you in waves so fast that if you just stack up RPGs and use the sky rail, you can just get behind them before they even get halfway toward the thing you're trying to protect. It just makes it's a game changer. But the fact that it sucks so bad on the Switch, you haven't done it up to that point because you're not going to. You know, why the hell would you choose to do that?
mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. It's just fucking hated it. Fucking hated it. Did I mention that I fucking hated it? Because I don't feel like I mentioned it enough.
What'd you hate? What was it that you hated so much?
The fucking Skyrail system.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Moving on. We're going to talk about gear for just like half of a fucking second, just so we can fucking just mention it, okay? This game introduces gear that you can equip at any time through the main menu. You can equip a hat, shirt, pants, shoes. Each slot has like special passive abilities. I think there's overall, I think this was a great idea. They probably didn't execute it the best. I appreciate the fact that I can diversify my character however I want based on my playstyle. Really love that. Okay. But then again, like maybe I want to wear two pants at a time, and no shirt, or maybe no shoes, let me equip different things, not necessarily, oh, you can only have one pair of pants, or you can only have one hat, or and so on and so forth, let me diversify it a little bit more and have a little bit more creative control over the passive abilities that I want to fit that playstyle.
Or just add a fourth vending machine where you can create your own.
That would be dope. That would be dope. Yeah. I'd be down for that.
It's pretty easy, 2K. You just missed it. You just missed
Right.
it, dog.
Straight miss. All right. Last little section that we're going to talk about before we hit our final impressions and the rating of this final game. We're going to talk about the enemies. We have 4 enemies and then a variation of 1 enemy. We have the Columbia citizens. We have the police. We have soldiers. And then we have the I guess if you want to fucking call these mini bosses, then so fucking be it. But they're not mini bosses, okay? They're just fucking stronger enemies. There's a fireman, zealot of the lady, a beast, motorized patriot. Fuck the motorized patriot, by the way. Handman, boy of silence, and sirens.
You hated the Patriots that much? Dude, the handymen
Eh,
are so much worse than the Patriots.
I hated how the motorized patriot was the one that you had to get behind to deal more damage, and it was just like, bruh, motherfucker, and you have to maneuver yourself around these motherfuckers, and then they would turn, and you're like, God damn, man, I just did all that work to get around you, and fuck.
Yeah.
It's. I'm gonna be completely honest. That it's probably not a valid complaint. It's mainly just pure laziness. If I'm being
Fair
completely
enough.
honest.
Yeah. No. That's fine.
All right. So they completely changed the enemies from Bioshock 1 and 2. Completely different enemies. Okay. That's good. That's great. Like, I'm all about them changing shit up for the third game. And we've already talked about the story a little bit. Maybe they should have brought us half to Rapture and then the rest been in Columbia or something, some variation of that. I'm down with the different enemies, especially when you're playing these games back to back to back. The issue is they are throwing so many hordes of these enemies that it becomes kind of cannon fodder, and it just becomes overly, they're just not overly interesting enough to do horde after horde after horde after horde after horde. It's just I didn't find the design aspect of the enemies to be all that interesting, and that was one of the reasons why I think past hour 10 of the game, it fucking slows down to a crawl, and I kind of just didn't give a shit about the game anymore, is because they just didn't give me anything interesting to do or see in the combat. But some of the heavy hitters in terms of design, I do like, and fighting them as well. So, what about you, sir? I just think they're super generic in comparison to the first game, like the first 2 games. If you look at the splicers and all that, like if you compare those enemies to other games out there, they're super unique looking from the design perspective. But if you picked out this character, this police or the soldiers or whatnot, and you put them, and you showed them to a random person that has played all these games and other games in general, and you said, "What game is this from?" I don't know whether they could pick out the game, because they're just so fucking generic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Um, the heavy hitters had variety. I'll stay on that hill as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just after the first 5 or 6 like levels that you go through, and you just kind of identify the combat pattern. Heavy hitters are not the only ones that ever actually made me go out of my way were handymen because they just get all up in your face and wreck your shit if you don't immediately deal with them. Everything else, it's just managing waves, like you said. So it's just if I didn't think the standalone story in this game was so much better, I would have completely lost interest in the combat aspect because it just went from killer thriller to shooter looter almost,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm over that. I'm good with that.
So yeah, I will agree. Handyman, they weren't annoying. It was like you said, if you didn't fucking deal with him, you were gonna have fucking issues. Like he was definitely a priority when he fucking showed up.
Well, because he was coming. Like he just like fuck you, dude. I don't care what else you got coming at you. You could deal with my ass first, which is
Shout
cool.
out to
You
that.
know, that's kind of. I mean, they. I'm sure he was supposed to be the mirror reflection of a Big Daddy. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. I don't mind that. But dealing with him first was no chore because everything simultaneously coming along with him was just so meh.
Absolutely agree, sir. All right. Before we jump into our final impressions of Bioshock Infinite and our score, do you have anything else you want to say about anything else that you want to dive into?
Nope.
Nope.
Everything I can say can be rolled into the final impression. So
All right. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way. I feel like mine's going to be significantly shorter than yours. So I'll get
I've
on
never heard
base and
that
just
before.
yeah. Oh, well, stick around. I'll get on base and let you back clean up. How about that? Um. All right. In comparison to the first two, story wise, I think it's an upgrade. I still stand by that. The story was told better. I like the story better because I love when the patriarchy gets and the papacy gets overthrown. I love a good "the church betrayed me" story. Um, I won't deep dive into why I appreciate those so much, but any of you that have known me for a while probably get it. I love the plot twist. I love that he wound up being his own worst enemy. I love that you got raptured into rapture. I love the symbolism. I love the irony. I think the story was told to perfection, almost damn near perfection. But in my opinion, that is probably the only upgrade to this game from the other two. A few minor tweaks. I do like how the vigors over the plasmids were kind of grouped together, and you'd have to spend an hour every time you went to the little upgrade station, figure out what you wanted to couple with what. You pretty much had what you had, so you just did what you did with it. The weapons about on the same level. I don't think the weapons were superior upgrade or downgrade. Enemies trash. Um, and environment absolute trash. So if I'm giving it story, I'm sitting idle on a couple things and I'm downgrading a couple things, I think a fair score for me is going to be a 7, maybe 7.25, because the story is the only really redeeming quality for me in comparison to the other two. So I have to score it lower. But at the same time, if you go into it knowing it's no longer a killer thriller and it's now a shooter looter or looter shooter, however you want to say it, it's still a fun game. Like it's fun. It's more arcade game, which is cool if that's what you want to sell it as. But I didn't hate it. Like I know I've just trashed it right alongside you for the last hour. Essentially, we've picked apart the things we didn't like, and it sounds like I probably hated the shit out of it. I don't. I still love the series. It's just they tried to sell me a standalone spin-off arcade game as the cherry on top of a trilogy, and to give it a fair score, that's not what we got with Bioshock Infinite. We got a standalone spin-off arcade game. So I'm gonna give it a 7.
So hold up. So would you put this as the worst game in the trilogy?
I like
Okay.
2 and then 1 and then Infinite.
See, the way you made it seem like before we did the deep dive was that this was without a doubt the best one in the series still. Like you didn't
That's,
I the way I took what you said was, yeah, my opinion didn't really change much with it.
at that point, it hadn't, but I was only about 8 hours into it when we had that conversation.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right. So I know I said I was gonna be more positive or try to be more positive. I felt like I did my best. Okay. Now that
You
we've
gave it a
gotten
good
to
old college try.
give it a good old college try, guys. I like I said, try my best. The overall final impressions of this game, I will not be able to be positive. Okay. Um, I have two different scores for this game. I have my score for the game, and then I have kind of like an unbiased score for the game,
Oh God.
which I think which I think is interesting because there's if you look at it from okay, take a step back and just look at all the elements that they do in this game. What kind of score is it? And then I feel like a different score would be okay. Now, how did I feel about this game? Because it's just like you say. I'm gonna use the analogy of let's use the Dark Knight. Okay, not everybody loves the Dark Knight. They'll go and say that is the worst Batman movie out of the bunch. It's not a Batman movie, and yada yada yada. Right? I think you could objectively look at that movie and say, you know, that's 5 stars to me. Like, take your personal opinions out of it. That is a fucking great movie. But personal opinion, not for me. Like, I don't feel like it's that good of a movie. So I feel like this is the perfect game to have two different scores on it. I try not to use two different scores, but I don't want people coming for me in the comment section and saying I fucking shit all this game and gave it a shitty score. I did, but I also gave it an objectively unbiased one too. So just keep that in mind. The first 9 to 10 hours of this game, I would die on a heel saying this is absolutely the best game of the trilogy. Something happened after about 10 hours into the game, and I'm not entirely sure how it just crashed so hard for me. Um, and we've kind of dived into that a little bit deeper through this deep dive. The story and the combat and whatnot, the enemy variety. I think there are some ideas here that aren't completely fleshed out from a gameplay perspective, but are obvious upgrades from the first two games. If you have followed along with our deep dive series, you know I haven't been a huge fan of the storytelling in those first two games. The way they tell Infinite Story is leaps and bounds better than the other games. The issue is, I think the game overstays its welcome. I think it's probably 3, 4, 5 hours too long. The gameplay becomes overly repetitive with the basic enemy design, and it just felt like I was going from point A to point B, just killing the same damn enemies over and over and over again. And the story just couldn't keep my interest over the 12, 15 plus hour runtime that it had. Skyhook, I'm going to try not to beat that into a dead horse again. Design wise, it's a great addition to the game to kind of give you a different, like, traversal option for sure. I just think it was poorly implemented it and could have been executed better. And then, like Chris said, it is probably more so the Switch version than the console version, which is fair. Which is fair. I will leave my opinion of that open if I ever decide to play it again, which we'll get into in just a second. Um, the waypoint system is probably at its best in this game, objectively speaking. Again, poorly executed. It's a pain in the ass when you can't figure out where to go, and then you have to traverse using the skyhook. Just confusing. The arrow wants you to go on the skyhook, and then yada yada yada. Right. In regards to the actual gunplay, 100% the best in the series. It feels fucking so good in my hands when I'm shooting the enemies, and the gunplay and the combat and whatnot is the best out of the three. I just wish the enemy variety was better and it didn't feel so samey from level to level. The level design is much better than the first two games from a concept standpoint, but it's just so uninteresting from an aesthetic standpoint. I still prefer Rapture over this. and it's not even close. Well, hold on. I take that back. Okay, take that back. I just fucking contradicted myself. I need to correct it because I don't want people coming at me in the fucking comment section. I think the level design early on, because of the difference in the three games, it feels new, it feels fresh, it feels like those levels are significantly better designed, right? And then when you start really diving into the game and playing it for significant portions of time, you realize that those level designs are not all that great.
It's
From
by
a
chapter 6 when you start to come out of the honeymoon phase.
exactly, exactly. So I just want to clarify that before people say, "Bro, what the fuck?"
And no, completely fair.
And then I do want to talk about the Switch version for a second. I do think the Switch kind of hurts it in that regard because it feels so washed out, overly bright from the aesthetic standpoint. You know, being so fucking bright. It does play well on the Switch though, so you can play it there. And now jumping into my actual score of the game, I think objectively speaking, unbiased, I think Chris is right. I think you could look at a 7.25 to a 7.5 for this game. You can make the case for a 7. I think it's a solid game. Okay, it's still not as good as the first two games. If I had to score it purely on how much I enjoyed it, and this is my biased opinion, I'm looking at about a 6 out of 10, and that's probably me being generous with it. I could probably go 5.5, 6. But I feel like if you drop below a 6, it's just a fucking terrible game, and I don't feel like it's poorly made by any means. There's no glitches, there's no fucking, it's like no crashes and shit like that. So I feel like it'd be unfair to give it below a 6. So I'm gonna stick with a 6. It's just I didn't enjoy it whatsoever. I even went back to the game, like I said before this episode, and I still have that feeling of Jesus Christ. I wish I wasn't fucking playing this game again. I could literally be doing anything else in my life and I'd find it more enjoyable than fucking playing this game again.
I could already be 2 hours into Persona 5 Royal.
Exactly. But like I said, unbiased, the concepts for an amazing game are there. I just think they needed to let this thing cook a little longer and fully flesh out some of these concepts. I'm just not a fan of it. And I will never find myself thinking about this game ever again, nor will I ever play it again. So there you go.
What a strange time for Zoom to give you a thumbs up.
Is that what it did?
Right as you were saying,
No.
and I will just never find myself playing this game again.
I don't understand why fucking Zoom does that shit, man. It's fucking weird.
That is fantastic. Zoom knows. Zoom
Zoom,
knows.
Zoom understands. So yeah, guys. If like I said, if you're a huge fan of Infinite and you've watched this for an hour and a half and you're like, dude, this is fucking bullshit. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like this doesn't take away from the fact that you love this game. Okay. My shitting over it for an hour and a half. I mean, you probably got tired of me being so negative towards it. It is what it is. I'm just calling it like I see it. But you can still love this game, even though I don't. It's perfectly fine.
When don't let anything that we're saying distract away from the fact that the understory and the lore behind it and the merging of the two worlds is explained much better outside of the game. But like my big thing is we're not here to deep dive that. We're here to deep dive the game. So I had to put my personal bias about Rapture and Columbia aside and isolate my thoughts specifically on the game. And it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit when I did that and I took the beer goggles off and realized that Infinite was infinitely not as good as the first two. And just it was a bummer for me, man. It was a real bummer, but sometimes it'd be
So
like that.
this is the issue. I don't know if you've kind of got this feeling now. I'm sure you have after doing 3 deep dives and some other reviews on top of that. But since becoming a content creator, doing the podcast and whatnot, I found more enjoyment in a lot more things prior to doing the podcast. But dude, it's like once you start opening your eyes to some of the minor details, the smaller details in like movies, games, music, whatever, it's just like fuck, man. I kind of wish I never reviewed this.
Yeah. No. I haven't done it nearly enough for that to have settled in like it has with you. I mean, my thing with Bioshock is this is probably the first time that's ever happened to me in revisiting something I used to be obsessed with. But sometimes you go home with a 9, you wake up with a 4. It'd be like that.
Shout out.
you know?
Bro, that's a fact of life right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be like that.
I'm gonna laugh about that all day now. But yeah, I agree, man. So y'all let us know in the comments below what you think about Bioshock Infinite. Are we off base here? Have you played it recently? I mean, don't say we're fucking stupid for a game that you didn't play for like fucking 7-8 years. Okay, you go back to it now, play along with us, and let us know in the comments below what you think about Bioshock Infinite. And that is the conclusion of our deep dive into the Bioshock trilogy. Overall, like I said, it was a nice series. It learning lessons more so than anything. I probably won't play any of these games ever again. If I do, I'll probably revisit one or two. But I guess with my my loaded schedule and whatnot, I probably won't ever revisit them. And it is what it is, But then again, I'm not a huge fan of shooters, so let that be known.
Well, I think for me it was fun to revisit Rapture, and it was fun to shoot the shit with you again. That's always a good time. But yeah, I'm good on Columbia, man. I'm probably never going back up there anymore. Hard pass.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought for a fact before we had this episode, I was like, "Fuck, man, me and Chris are getting so many arguments."
No, no.
And
We were when you said that, and then I got to the point where the bird kidnapped her again, and I was just like, "Fuck, really?" Now I feel like I'm starting this shit all over. And then I was like, "I get it. Columbia's dick. Columbia is dick. My steak is shit."
right. But yeah, guys, Persona 5 Royal, the next deep dive. I don't know, like I said, I don't know exactly when that will air. We're gonna start playing through it and probably recording in January. We're gonna be doing the release schedule a little bit differently than Bioshock Trilogy or even Final Fantasy X. We'll probably go with more of a Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where we kind of space out the episodes some to give you time to play the game and whatnot. I think we'll probably end up doing it that way. But deep dives galore coming up. Bioshock Trilogy next week. Okay, not next week for us because we're talking in the past. But when you fucking listen to this, Lord of the Rings starts fucking next week. Deep dive into the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We're doing all 6 movies: Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, and then we're gonna do the Hobbit trilogy right after that, and then we're gonna do Rings of Power. And somewhere along those lines, we're look, first half of the year, deep dives galore. Okay, guys, super excited to do Persona 5 Royal with Chris here, and I can't wait for it, sir.
I know. Oh, me neither. Me either, buddy. We've already got. Dylan said he wanted to play along. Tyler said he was probably gonna load an old save and start over and play along. So, guys, I'm telling you, if you like JRPGs, you like turn-based combat, and you like anime, or even 2 out of 3 of those, buy this game. You can probably get it for 35, 40 bucks. I sent Dylan a link. It was like $22 on Black Friday on Amazon, so it's usually probably around 40. But you'll love it, and it's going to be a super fun one to dive into part for part. Can't upsell it enough.
Absolutely. Also, links down below: Patreon, merch, social media accounts. We would greatly appreciate your support. with any of the things that you decide to do, like, subscribe, do all that bullshit. We greatly appreciate it. But guys, thank y'all for joining us for the Bioshock Trilogy deep dive series, and we will catch y'all next time on another episode. Thank you, sir,
Of
for
course,
joining me.
man. No problem. Thanks for letting me. Peace out,
Absolutely.
guys.
Laters.